Thank you for joining us for our webinar this afternoon. A couple of ground rules on the slides here about microphones and cameras being disabled upon entry to cut down on background noise and distractions. We will also be leveraging the chat and Zoom polls throughout the presentation. So keep that in mind. In the first 15 minutes, we will have a couple of polls and engagement opportunities, and then we'll have a general Q&A at the end of the session. But since we are at the top of the hour and we have a lot of content to cover, I think we can go ahead and get started. So here we wanted to offer you some captioning options. So in the chat is a live stream text link. I can recopy that in for folks who maybe came in afterwards. But you can also leverage the captioning capabilities in your Zoom toolbar. You'll notice at the bottom of this screen here is a snapshot of that for show captions. You can enable those. They will be going live in both spots, whichever you prefer. Okay, so welcome again. This is our third webinar of this year, how to develop or developing accessible IDEA reports with ADAPT, the ADAPT tool. We have a lot to cover. Our agenda is as follows. So we will start out addressing the state of accessibility and IDEA reporting. And again, in that section, we will have multiple opportunities for engagement. We will then go into a little bit of an overview of the Weiss Center for maybe if this is folks' first time joining us, talking about our mission a little bit to tee it up for a little bit of a deep dive into ADAPT. That is the what, who, how, and why. And we'll talk about benefits within that section, as well as the cost of inaction. And then we will get into the meat of the presentation, probably going to take the majority of the time, is a walkthrough and demonstration of the tool itself. We'll have one of our presenters walking us through the state user side, and then also a recorded demo capturing some of the accessibility capabilities and features that have been embedded or implemented within the ADAPT tool. And then we will close with a Q&A. Again, just wanted to reiterate, please feel free to leave any questions or comments throughout the presentation. We have a couple of folks on our end who are going to be monitoring chat. So we'll be able to get that to you, or if it's coming up and we know that your question will be answered, we can let you know that as well. Okay. Without further ado, let's get into our first item. So I'm going to pass it over to Sarah Sinani, who's going to be talking about the state of accessibility and IDEA reporting.
Hi, welcome again. My name is Sarah Sinani, as Darren said, and I'm the Weiss Center Part B TA lead. And we're going to be kicking off our agenda with the state of accessibility and IDEA reporting, just like Darren had mentioned. So here we want to introduce our main character. So let's meet Anna, our data manager. Anna has been with the agency for about 2 years. And Anna is tasked with converting all of her agency's IDEA data visualizations or representations into a format that is ADA compliant. A quick note here is that we've adopted the term data representation over data visualization, as the latter shows an implicit bias towards sighted users. Anna's challenges as a data manager are a lack of awareness in its infancy stage, and she's still learning. Data is not presented in a format that everyone can access and is not always easy to understand. Data systems are often difficult to navigate, and there are only 2 members in her entire unit that know anything about the 508 standards, but she has a robust conversation as a team. She's had robust conversations as a team on the impacts of language, culture, intended audience, etc. And within her department and within her area of work, accessibility has not been a priority. So we're going to move into, I want you to keep Anna in mind as we go through our presentation today. We will come back to her, but keep her situation in mind as we talk about accessibility, and think about how your job relates to Anna in that way. So we're going to move into a little bit of audience participation. So in the chat, if you could tell us, what is the first word that comes to mind when you hear the term accessibility? So I'm seeing a couple of things: comprehension, access, screen readers, belonging. That's a good one. fairness, online content access. Yes, these are all really good. The ability for anyone to be able to engage in a meaningful way. Very good. Assistive technologies, that's a big one too. Okay, keep them coming because we're keeping an eye on the chat, and that way we can kind of see where everyone is. But we're going to hop into what we as the Weiss Center think of when we think of accessibility and what we mean by accessibility. So when we say digital accessibility, the University of Florida describes it as the ability of a website, social media, electronic document, mobile application, or tools to be easily navigated and understood by a wide range of users, including those who have auditory, visual, motor, or cognitive disabilities. And that's a list that is not, it's not final. We know that those abilities go beyond just those mentioned here. Okay, back to audience participation. We're going to pop up a poll. With that definition in mind, how familiar are you with making digital content accessible? Not familiar at all, somewhat familiar, or very familiar. And you should see a poll pop up. And go ahead and take a few seconds to answer. Okay, I'm seeing that most people are somewhat familiar. So right in that middle range. Very good. That helps us to understand where everyone is along the spectrum as we go through today. All right. Darren, can we hop to the next slide? Or did you? And I just can't see. Okay, sorry. My poll was still right in the way. So the Weiss Center and our staff have reviewed both Part B and Part C states and territories websites. And our goal was to find information on IDEA child count data. Once we found it, we reviewed the data to see if it had any representations, meaning charts and graphs to represent that data. And of the states that we reviewed, 60 states and territories in Part B and 56 in Part C. In Part B, only 7 had data representations available, and in Part C, only 3 had data representations. So that's the percentages that you see there. All right, another poll question, and think about your state. And we realize that this poll is geared towards state agencies, but if you are not part of a state agency, we still welcome anyone who's representing a state or an organization to use the chat to share their experience beyond just the results we have here. So what we're looking for here, which option best describes your state when sharing IDEA data with the public? You don't share, you provide Excel or PDF files, you provide charts and graphs, you direct users to the OSEP website or other. And if you use more than one, use the other option, and then please drop in the chat what avenues you use to share data, or if you use multiple, list those multiple in the chat. Okay, and as the data is coming through, we have a few using other, but for the most part, people are saying that they provide Excel or PDF files. Okay, North Carolina says some of the data is on their own website. Otherwise, it depends on exactly what data is being asked for. Another provides charts and graphs, but also directs users to the OSEP website. I think that that's pretty common amongst states when talking about any of the 618 or EdPass files. Okay. All right, this brings us to Johan, and he's going to talk to us about the Weiss Center mission and the Weiss Center itself.
Thank you, Sarah, and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on what part of the country you live in. My name is Johan Rempel, as Sarah mentioned. I have the privilege of serving as the co-director of the Rhonda Weiss Center, along with Fred Idora. Currently, much of the IDEA data representing children with disabilities is not accessible itself. And this really prevents people with disabilities, such as family members, state employees, caregivers, and advocates, along with the children themselves, from successfully accessing this data. The Rhonda Weiss Center is named after Rhonda Weiss. She was a dedicated and compassionate U.S. Department of Education attorney and staunch disability advocate. As an individual who was blind herself, she had a lifetime of lived experiences as a person with a disability. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Weiss Center mission. Accessibility is our highest priority with everything we do, and our primary activities to make IDEA data reporting accessible include the creation of a free data reporting tool that allows states, including Part C providers, to publish accessible IDEA data and also provide technical assistance. Now, how is the Weiss Center addressing the accessibility problem? We're doing this in a number of fronts. First off, we're raising national awareness, and this is done through frequent communication with stakeholders, through blogs that address accessibility-related topics, along with quarterly newsletters. We're also doing this through conference attendance throughout the country. This includes presentations, conference booths, and also networking opportunities as well. And then secondly, we also provide technical assistance supports. So this can take place at 3 levels: intensive technical assistance, also known as intensive TA. So we work with states and Part C providers, and we empower them to increase the accessibility of their digital assets. These include, but certainly are not limited to, creating more accessible documents in formats such as Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and PDF, and increasing the accessibility of websites as well. There's targeted TA. These can be single requests pertaining to an organization's accessibility needs. And the Weiss Center also facilitates a community of practice for states and Part C providers to share and learn collectively about accessibility-related barriers and solutions in order to improve access to IDEA data. And then last, but certainly not least, universal TA. So a number of products and tools are being created to further assist with accessibility. These include Word, Excel, PowerPoint accessibility, and the creation of alternative text of images for people who are low vision and blind. We also seek out partnerships and collaboration, such as our National Advisory Council, with representation from across the country. It includes stakeholders from various organizations, and also includes individuals who have lived experiences with disabilities. And then teaching accessibility practices to states, including Part C providers. So in order to ensure that greater success and sustainability in the area of accessibility is accomplished, the Weiss Center is committed to providing the resources and information, and this can certainly result in transferable skills and expertise to state and Part C providers for current and future capacity building. So that's what we're really aiming toward, is sustainable and long-term changes here. And so how is the Weiss Center achieving better accessibility? We're doing this by involving and engaging people with disabilities throughout our design and development process. The Weiss Center conducted 4 sessions throughout the country to collect inputs for this tool, the ADAPT tool. This includes Seattle, Atlanta, and DC, along with 1 virtual session so that people who may not have been able to travel could also participate. And we had a total of 80 participants, 80, contributing. This included persons with blindness, low vision, motor impairments, individuals who were neurodivergent, and also the deaf and hard of hearing population. And throughout the conception and design of the tool, we conducted usability studies as well to capture the needs of stakeholders from both an accessibility and usability perspective. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Nicole to provide an ADAPT overview.
Thank you, Johan. Good afternoon again, and my name is Nicole Bowie, and I am the technology lead for the Weiss Center. What that means is that I lead the development team that's responsible for developing the ADAPT tool, and I'm really looking forward to sharing with you what our team has developed today. So thank you for being here and giving me this opportunity. So when you might ask, what is ADAPT? So ADAPT is an acronym for Accessible Data Analysis and Publishing Tool. It is a free tool, meaning that states who want to adapt, there's no cost, no licensing fees for you to use at all. It is modern, it is accessible, and it is a cloud-based reporting tool. It supports IDEA data sets, both 616 as well as 618, both Part C and Part B. And what it allows states to do is allows data managers to be able to create and publish reports that are accessible to people with disabilities. So who are the users of ADAPT? ADAPT was developed with intention of two user groups or communities. The first one of the state authorized users. And what it does is allow states to not only meet IDEA federal reporting requirements, but also sections 508 as well as ADA Title II requirements, which Johan will go into a little bit further in a few moments. And for authorized user includes folks like data managers, state directors, administrators, IT staff, but really this is not an inclusive list. You could also expand it to include and give access to other users that you may want to give access to that we have not considered. The other community includes public users, and they include folks like students, parents, educators, researchers, as well as even advocates for the people with disabilities. And what it allows you to do is provide them the information that they need to have conversations and discussions, and be able to give them the ability to give them the information that empowers them to make better decisions. And certainly when data is shared openly, it will improve communications for everyone. So here's a easy 4-step guide to ADAPT. The first thing that you would do is the state authorized users would load the data from either your state data systems, the CDS data warehouse, or even your IDA Part B, Part C files that you upload into EdFacts, for example, or even the files that you get from out of eMaps, and load that into the ADAPT admin system. From there, your state authorized users can create accessible data reports using the defined ADAPT report templates that we have available to make sure that the data and the outputs are accessible. Once they've been created, then an authorized administrator can go in, review the reports that have been created by a data manager or reporter to either approve or make requests to make any revisions as necessary. And once they are approved, the accessible data reports are then published to the ADAPT viewer so that they can be accessed by the public. And what you see here on the right-hand side is a screenshot of a sample report of just a student count with disabilities. You can see that the explain toggle is turned on. And what it does is it's a feature that provides a plain language summary. And what this shows here is the number of students with disabilities as well as the percentage of the top categories. At this point, I'd like to turn over to Johan to talk about the benefits of using ADAPT.
Great. Thank you, Nicole, for that, that overview. So some of the benefits to adapt, there are several. They include the opportunity to create a more inclusive and meaningful digital environment, whether a person has a disability or not. A lot of aspects related to usability and accessibility have really been baked into the ADAPT tool to make it more accessible across the board. It will better equip communities with the knowledge to engage in data-driven discussions and decision-making so that everyone is at the table making these decisions, informed decisions driven by data. It also increases transparency of data, thereby streamlining communication and fostering greater collaboration. So now I'm going to briefly talk about the cost of inaction. Now that we've addressed the benefits of ADAPT at a high level, we want to take a moment to note a few potential costs of inaction. If you recall Anna, our data manager from earlier that Sarah had introduced, you'll notice that these costs align with some of the pain points that she and her team would be facing. So some of these include resources to training states on accessibility. We're aware that states are continually juggling limited capacity and competing priorities. So ensuring the accessibility of your state's data can be a complex and cost-intensive process. And one concrete example here is while built-in automated accessibility checkers like those found in Microsoft products are a good start, they do not necessarily capture all of the accessibility issues that may exist. Therefore, further resources are often needed beyond those automated tools. And then not meeting federal compliance requirements. States are required to provide individuals with disabilities, both externally and internally, equitable access to information comparable to what is available to the general public. If not done with accuracy and completeness, this can result in inaccessible information to individuals with disabilities. And then the time required to make digital content accessible. States put in a lot of effort when it comes to their data collection and reporting processes. Without accessibility knowledge and expertise and not baking accessibility into the workflow from the very beginning, additional time and effort will be required in order to retrofit digital assets after the fact. And a concrete example of this, of baking accessibility into the workflow, is creating an accessible Word document and then saving it as an accessible PDF. This is much less time consuming than trying to remediate a PDF after the fact. That's just one example of a cost saving that, we know that states are really busy and very often at capacity. So any sort of cost savings in that area and time savings, we know is very valuable. And then Nicole had alluded to this, potential legal risks due to non-compliance with ADA Title II. As we will discuss in a moment, ADA Title II has been updated and it now exceeds Section 508. So failure to comply with these federal and state requirements not only has accessibility implications for stakeholders, but also opens the door for increased legal risk as well. So let's talk a little bit about the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title II. We have limited time here, so this is a very brief overview. So regarding the new rule of the Americans with Disabilities Act, under Title II, all state and local governments must follow the ADA regardless of their size. And the updated ruling from the Department of Justice now sets a specific technical standard for web and mobile accessibility that exceeds Section 508. I'll now pass it on to Sarah Sinani again, who will be providing a walkthrough of the functional aspects of the ADAPT tool.
Thank you, Johan. As Johan mentioned, I will start with a walkthrough of loading our data and creating an internal report from a state perspective. Think back to Anna, our data manager, who would be then creating reports that eventually are shared with the public. And when I'm finished, Johan will demo the public view so that you can all see what the public would see after the reports are created. Before we walk through this, I want to share that this process from login to creating a report initially when I was first learning the system took me about 15 minutes, and now it takes me about 5. So just so you have a reference as to how long this process takes from loading data into the system, and that's using a CSV file, to creating a report that then can be used internally and then externally. So what you see on the screen here is kind of our home landing page. So we'll start the process by loading data for our report into ADAPT. And the first step is to click the Data tab on the left-hand side of the screen, and then select Data View in the middle of the screen. Once the list of data views comes up, we want to create a new data view. So we'd click on the right-hand side of the screen. We'd click the Create button. And for today, we're going to load child count data. So we select that in the drop-down box, in that first drop-down box, and then we would select the year. For this, we're going to load 22-23 data. And finally, we're going to use the file we submitted to EdPass. So we'll select the option to load a CSV file. You'll see at the bottom that there's a warning that this data collection may already exist. This is just for you to double check so that you're not duplicating efforts. So if something has already been created using this data set, you can either go back and use that data set or that data file that's already been loaded, or you can continue forward. It's not going to stop the process. It's just a warning to make sure you're not duplicating effort. So next, we're going to load the data into the data file. On this screen, we will actually load the data. So by clicking the plus sign to the right of the file to be loaded, you'll see a brief summary of the data that's included. Then you can either drag and drop a file into the box, or you can load it from a folder. So today we're going to choose to load it from a folder, and we've selected the folder. Once that data is loaded and you've clicked through and either dragged and dropped or found the file you want within a folder on your desktop, our system will go through a series of internal checks to ensure that the file that contains data matches the collections selected. So in this case, we've selected the 002 file, or the 089 file, which is the preschool file. And the data loaded needs to match the ages and settings within that file. And if it doesn't, you'll get a thumbs down and a red box there. But since this passes, you'll get a green thumbs up box. As soon as you have that green thumbs up box in your data files, you can click Next at the bottom for a brief summary of the data. So here we see a brief summary of the data that we've loaded. And what you'll notice is that this is just the first 10 files or 10 lines of data. This is intended to be a simple check that the data that you have put into the system is indeed what you intended to load. Once you've made that check and this is what you want to load, you'll click the Close Preview box in the upper right corner. And then we find a summary page. This is just a summary of what you have done so far. And once you are ensured that these are the files you intend to load, this is the data collection that you're using, you can click Next to name the file to name the data collection we've created. In this box, you'll see the name and description are pre-populated. You can choose to use those pre-populated names and descriptions, or you can change them. The name does need to be unique. So if it's not unique and you try to click Next, you'll get an error. You'll have to go back and make sure that that is a unique name. After you've named it, you can click Next. And this brings us back to the data view page. So we've loaded our data, it's in the system, and now we're ready to create an internal report using that data view we just created. So we'll select the data view and click to expand that box. It'll be a plus sign there on the right-hand side. And then we'll want to select Create at the bottom of the box. This will bring us to the data configuration page. We'll select the data view we want to use. This is pre-populated with the data view we selected, but if that was done in error or we want a different data view, we can click the drop down and select a different data collection. We'll select then the report template we want to create. For this demo, we're creating a child count report. And we're also creating an internal report for this walkthrough. However, if you were ready, you could create an external report from here. And then we click next. And this brings us to a place where we name the report. And again, you'll see pre-populated names and descriptions that can be changed or used as they are. And then you'll see a predefined metadata tags that are set based on the report being created. So then we're going to click Preview Report. And this brings us to just a preview that you can scroll through to see what data is included and the data representations that are being used. So in this preview, we can see the report with unsuppressed data, or we can choose in the right-hand corner to suppress the data and see what will be shown publicly after you make the report external. So after viewing and reviewing the report, we'll click Next to confirm our selections. And here again, you see a summary of the selections you've created. And if everything looks okay, you'll click Next to save. So this brings us to the end of the internal walkthrough. And now you've loaded data and created a report. And ADAPT is designed to give you step-by-step process, which makes it easy when there's staff turnover. There's no question as to how to load that data. It's in there step-by-step to make it mistake-proof, mostly, and make it easy for someone to learn the system. At this point, Johan is now going to do a demo of the public-facing side of ADAPT.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah, for that functional walkthrough. So we're now going to focus on the accessibility aspects of ADAPT, as Sarah mentioned, with a brief video walkthrough. And we're going to be highlighting some of the accessibility features using a screen reader. For those who may not be aware of screen readers, they're used by individuals who are blind to access digital content. And keep in mind that good design is accessible design. So these accessibility features really benefit everybody across the board. The short video is just over 4 minutes long, and will highlight many of the accessibility features and considerations that have gone into ADAPT for people with disabilities. We'll go ahead and play that now. This is a brief overview of the accessibility and usability aspects of the ADAPT tool. And right now I'm running the JAWS screen reader. This is the most commonly used screen reader by individuals who are blind, and this program converts text to speech. Now I'm going to highlight some of the accessibility features within ADAPT, and I'm going to navigate to the Skip to Section area.
Tab panel, frame, navigation region, skip to a section button menu, press.
Okay, and then I can simply go down arrow.
Main, 1 of 12.
And it very quickly and easily with the arrow keys allows me to skip to the main sections of the ADAPT tool.
Region.
And then it's high contrast, it's white text on black background, and to get out of that I can hit escape.
Escape, leaving.
And similar to the rest of the ADAPT tool, it also meets and exceeds color contrast requirements. Now headings have also been very effectively labeled, hierarchical in nature. We can list those all within a dialog box.
Heading list dialog.
And then we can very quickly sort through the H1, heading 1.
Alt 1.
H2.
Alt 2. What can you do here? Alt 3.
H3.
Alt 4.
And H4.
Escape.
Very quick and easy way for someone who's blind using a screen reader to navigate through the important sections of the ADAPT tool. And all of the links are also contextual in nature, very easily understood when those are listed in a dialog box. Now, both visible focus and programmatic focus have also been considered for individuals with disabilities, potentially navigating this ADAPT tool through a peripheral device or the keyboard alone. I'm going to now tab to the accessibility features.
Menu, data, report, setting, accessibility, 5 of 7. Space. Leaving menus. Accessibility settings dialog.
Now, as I access the accessibility features on the right-hand side, a panel appears, and we have text size, spacing, color, and layout. And I'm going to speak briefly about each one of these. So text size, right now it's at the default 100%. We can increase that up to 200%. And what's especially helpful is when these settings are changed, they are retained and saved for the individual's respective account. So the next time they log in, they won't need to change all of these. And we can take this up to 200%, for example, and I'll bring it down to 125%. If we go to spacing here, this is really helpful because for individuals who may have a learning or cognitive disability, or someone that's low vision who has difficulties tracking large amounts of information and panning from left to right, that additional spacing can be very helpful for a lot of individuals. We can also change the color for someone who may be glare sensitive. The dark mode could be really helpful in cutting down that glare, for instance. And then if we go to the layout here, the two choices are default or mobile. Mobile can be especially helpful for someone that's accessing this through a smartphone or tablet, for instance, but it's also helpful for people who prefer to have this linearized in one column on a desktop or laptop, for instance. Now I'm going to navigate to a report in draft mode. So I've accessed the reports on the left-hand side, and I'm going to go ahead and open this child count sample report. I'd like to demonstrate a few more accessibility options available here in this demo report. If we scroll down here under disabilities, we have an explain toggle. When that's enabled, we have a plain language summary made available. And then to the right of that is glossary, which provides an additional description. So as you've seen and heard throughout this brief demonstration, the ADAPT tool is highly accessible and user-friendly for individuals with disabilities, but also everyone across the board that benefits from a clean and user-friendly interface. All right, so I hope this demonstration is a brief overview. Oh, boy, you're hearing me twice. I feel sorry for the attendees. I hope this demonstration provided some additional insights on how people with disabilities access data and the accessibility features built into ADAPT. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Darren right now to facilitate any questions you may have.
Thank you, Johan. Much appreciated. And thank you again to Nicole, Sarah, Johan for the excellent information. Real quick, as you all situate yourself for Q&A, I know that was a lot of information. We did go through it in a pretty streamlined fashion, of course, by design to make sure we could fit it all into the time that we have. But we really do want to hear any questions you might have. So we encourage you all to put those in chat. The reason that we're leveraging chat as opposed to folks coming on and off mute is also just because we want to keep a record of these questions. So as folks think of questions, I'm actually going to scroll up to the top for those that may have missed. There's a question asked, does the ADAPT tool also work with EMAPS files? I'm specifically wondering about the LEA MOE CEIS file. Nicole answered that one. The answer is yes. Got some hearts on that too, which is always great. And then another question regarding the text that is the text that displays editable. And getting some more information about that now. If I recall, when that question, there was text about students served. I believe the answer to that, if I'm trying to recall when that question came in as part of Sarah's walkthrough, I believe the answer to that question may be yes, because it seemed like it was a pre-populated field, which is an open text field and allows you to edit as needed. But Nicole, if that is incorrect, please chime in.
Yes, I don't know if you're able to go back to that slide. I can try to look for, I believe it has to do with the report creation process and potentially in the report preview. Is that right, Mary? I don't know if Mary can come, may not be able to come.
And I'm seeing here, Nicole, just because it was specifically mentioned, served by the Office of Special Education Programs. I believe this would be an example of it.
Okay. If that is the case, then you're absolutely correct. The answer is yes, that can be changed.
To chat here.
So it looks like we answered Mary's question, so perfect.
Yes. So I'm not seeing any other questions come in, but we will give it a moment.
Darren, one question that we had gotten previously was, what does this look like for us as a state when we use it? And I know that you saw a preview of what Johan displayed, and there was some red, white, and blue flags in there. When a state adopts, implements adapt, that will be configured to match the state color scheme and website. So it will look seamless going across. I know that there was some concern about it looking like it's coming from somewhere else, but as long as everything matches up with color contrast and other items, etc., we can have it look like it's straight from the state website because it is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, a good note. The interface itself is customizable. So I think in that we may have had a general seal or a logo on there just as a placeholder. It may have been in the Department of Education seal. That is customizable. The branding of it, that is. So yes, feel free to implement whatever your state's seal is throughout the adapt tool in your specific instance.
And thank you, Sarah, for bringing that up. And that is certainly something that we would work with you as part of the intensive TA process. When you want to implement ADAPT, we'll go through an onboarding process, but we'll work with you to get those colors, your color schemes implemented. And the reason why, what we want to do is kind of work with you to make sure that the colors, the color combinations based on your scheme, right, or your style guides matches or will be set up to make sure that from a color contrast perspective, it is accessible and that we don't, we don't have color combinations that would potentially not meet those guidelines. I think
Thank you.
I'm sorry. So one other question that our team has, the Weiss Center has been speaking to kind of states that would be interested in ADAPT. And one of the questions that we also get asked is that, what would the process look like in terms of, is this a time intensive process? And we have, really been very diligent and taken a lot of care in implementing a tool that minimizes the level of effort for you to be able to implement ADAPT. And so we're doing everything really kind of through configuration, and there may be some things that you would need to kind of bring to the table when you're ready to implement. For example, what users, who's going to have access to ADAPT, and what type of roles and permissions do you want to grant them? Do you want to give them the ability to create a report or to approve a report? So things like that again, you would kind of come to us and let us know, okay, well, this is, Joe needs to have access or to be able to create a data view, and Nancy needs to be able to create a report, and David needs to be able to approve the report. So those are things that, again, very, very easy. I think very low lift, hopefully on the state side to be able to do that. But we anticipate that through like a 1 hour, 2 hour session, we can work with you to configure ADAPT so that it meets your specific requirements and your needs.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm actually going to jump the gun, and just for anybody that might be interested, I dropped in chat a link to our website where you could request a demo. It's on our contact page. It's one of the toggle options for onboarding the ADAPT tool, at least to get the conversation started, to hear if you may be interested. Perhaps you are a state that has a very specific use case. You have some specific parameters that are specific to your state, which I'm sure many of you do have. So feel free to reach out to us. What Nicole was describing, kind of the people processes side of things, certainly is part of that conversation, but that is also part of the intensive TA process, I would say, first and foremost. So reach out to us. We can schedule a scoping call and we can assess the situation as a team and see what the best fit for you might be. And as I don't see any questions coming in, and since I'm off mute, I'll keep going.
Darren?
I also Wanted to go ahead. I'm sorry, Sarah.
Before you go off mute, Nicole, how would you answer the question of, my state has a pretty decent reporting mechanism, and we show some data representations on our state website that we feel are accessible at this point. Why should I use ADAPT? Why would ADAPT benefit me in that way?
That is a great question. And I would say that this ties back to the benefits that Johan mentioned earlier. But with the ADAPT, our responsibility will be to maintain ADAPT so that as rules change, compliance change, like reporting requirements change, for example, Sarah, when you did the walkthrough earlier, where you showed for the IDEA kind of child count collection, we were, we were going against a specific year. So as those guidelines, rules change, and let's say, for example, in 2 years from now, if we add there's a new data that's being collected by OSAP, then our responsibility for ADAPT is to make sure that we can accommodate any changes on those file specifications, as well as not just the file specifications from an IDA federal reporting requirements, but also with respect to 508 compliance. I mean, we talked about ADAPT being, exceeding 508 compliance, but as those guidelines change, we're doing all the work so that the states don't have to. So I would say that's really, I think, a key benefit to using something like ADAPT.
So you're saying the ability to not have to go back in and retrofit your own website, your own
Exactly.
Reporting mechanism in order to stay compliant with 508 or ahead of the curve, as Johan had mentioned with Title II, staying ahead of some of those upcoming requirements and changes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And one thing that I also want to point out is that, and we, given that we do have a 1 hour webinar, we want to be respectful of your time. And there's definitely a lot more that behind a functionality that has been developed, but also will be developed and be ready when we launch in October that we did not show. And I know when we spoke to a state, they were interested in one of the functionality, because they had participated in usability studies, that they really were interested in seeing was that the ability to go in and interact with a report as a parent, as a student, or an advocate, was able to go in and drill down and interact with the report so that they can essentially manipulate what gets shown within the report. And again, just due to time constraints, we didn't have the ability to show that today, but that is something that is available, and we're happy for those that are interested in seeing a little bit more, a demo of the other functionality that we did not get to today. We're happy to show that as well.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole, Sarah, and Johan. Really appreciate it. I'm sure others do as well. For the sake of time, I think we can go ahead and kind of do our little wrap up here. If you have questions that perhaps you will think of later, or they're on the tip of your tongue, feel free to also include any comments or questions. Contact us directly at contact@weissta.org, or you can also leave them in our evaluation. So I dropped the webinar evaluation survey in the chat. You also see on the screen a QR code on the right-hand side of the screen that leads you to that same site. Again, this is a brief survey, takes about 3 minutes. Your responses are completely confidential, and information provided will be used to, develop and brainstorm future topics, offerings, opportunities, tools, and products. I truly can't name the amount of things we've already developed, created, or in the process of creating that come from these evaluation surveys. They are critical to the work that we do, because the work that you all do is critical. So we want to make sure that we are meeting the need. So please take time to fill out this survey. Again, only takes a couple of minutes. We greatly appreciate it. One of our last slides here, also just wanted to talk about resources and support. So obviously we already went through, Johan did a good job categorizing and describing the different levels of TA we offer that is intensive, targeted, and universal. I dropped in the request a demo link as well. Both of those great options for getting started, getting your feet wet a little bit, getting some more information to you all. or more information that you can then take to your team to see what the best course of action will be for your specific use case, state, etc. There are also ongoing ADAPT resources being developed, the latest of which is a brief handout, one pager. ADAPT 101 goes through a little bit of what we just talked about too. But we are in the process of developing and finalizing a more comprehensive document with a lot of the information that you saw here, as well as some that maybe you didn't. So be on the lookout for that. And last but certainly not least, wanted to promote our OSEP session. So this is not even the extent to them, but certainly the ones that we wanted to highlight here. So a technology demonstration specifically talking about ADAPT. So that is a great opportunity for anybody who is present at that conference to come talk to Nicole and others about potentially adopting ADAPT. We also have a workshop and a poster. The workshop is actually going to be in a collaboration with 2 state partners as well to talk about some of the work that they've already done from a technical assistance perspective. So I know that we can sit up here and tell you how great it is all we want, but I know that hearing from states, hearing from your colleagues across the nation is really the most valuable piece there. So an opportunity to do that at the OSEP conference. Okay, well, I know that we are about 9 minutes out of schedule, which I don't think anybody will be too upset about, but just wanted to take the last minutes here to, again, thank our presenters and thank you all for hanging with us. Really hope it was useful information. Again, please fill out that webinar survey. It'll help us provide meaningful webinars like this in the future. But yes, thank you all. And again, thank you to our presenters.